The world of global trade is in chaos. Tariffs, counter-tariffs, and economic policies are clashing in a high-stakes battle that is reshaping industries and impacting everyday life. Today, we're diving into Donald Trump's tariff war, the fierce responses from Canada and the European Union, and what these changes mean for you, whether you're buying a car, shopping for groceries, or working at a factory. Stay tuned as we break down the numbers, the policies, and the real-world effects of this economic showdown. Chapter 1. Trump's Tariff War, What's Happening? Back in 2018, former President Donald Trump shook the global market by announcing sweeping tariffs on two of the most crucial materials in modern industry, steel and aluminum. The administration imposed a 25% tariff on imported steel and a 10% tariff on aluminum, arguing that these measures were necessary to protect American jobs and national security. According to officials, these tariffs were aimed at stopping what they called unfair trade practices by countries dumping cheap metals into the U.S. market. To put this in perspective, the tariffs affected approximately $300 billion worth of imports. That's hundreds of billions of dollars flowing into the U.S. economy. But at what cost? When the price of raw materials goes up, so do the prices of everything made from them. This means automobiles, appliances, construction projects, and even the aluminum cans for your soda start to cost more. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York estimated that by 2019, the average American household was paying an extra $831 per year because of these tariffs. Take the auto industry, for example. Cars rely on vast amounts of steel and aluminum. When these materials become more expensive, manufacturers pass those costs on to consumers. The National Automobile Dealers Association reported that the price of a new vehicle jumped by an average of $1,200, making it harder for families to afford a reliable car. And it doesn't stop there. Beverage companies saw aluminum tariffs add an extra $1.4 billion in costs, a figure that ultimately trickled down to your local grocery store. Home renovations and construction projects were not spared either. Tariffs drove up the cost of construction materials by anywhere from 6 to 10%. Imagine planning a home improvement project only to discover that everything from nails to beams has suddenly become much more expensive. That's the real impact of these policies on our daily lives. For American farmers, the trade war had devastating consequences. China, which once imported massive quantities of U.S. soybeans, retaliated by cutting imports by 75%. This abrupt drop in demand sent soybean prices tumbling to their lowest levels in over a decade, leading to widespread financial distress and the closure of more than 20,000 family farms in 2019. These aren't just numbers, they represent real communities and families struggling to make ends meet. Chapter 2. Canada's response: We won't be pushed around. While the United States was busy imposing tariffs, Canada, one of its largest trading partners, wasn't going to take the insults and economic pressure lying down. In a show of defiance, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced retaliatory tariffs on American goods valued at $12.6 billion. These measures targeted a range of products, from ketchup and orange juice to motorcycles, sending a clear message that Canada would defend its economic sovereignty. Before the tariffs, over 50% of Canada's steel exports found a market in the United States. After the trade war erupted, those exports dropped by 23%, dealing a significant blow to Canadian steelworkers and related industries. In response, the Canadian government poured $2 billion into clean energy initiatives, including an innovative program that offered up to $10 in rebates for domestic electric vehicle purchases. This move was designed to boost local manufacturing and reduce reliance on U.S. imports. But what does this mean for everyday Canadians? On one hand, tariffs on U.S. agricultural products meant that items like apples, peanut butter, and dairy products became 5 to 10% more expensive. This hit families hard at the checkout. On the other hand, government incentives helped make Canadian-made electric vehicles more attractive and affordable compared to their imported counterparts, potentially paving the way for a greener, more self-reliant economy. However, it wasn't all positive. The uncertainty caused by the trade war put over 43,000 Canadian manufacturing jobs at risk. particularly in industries that heavily relied on exports to the United States. The ripple effect of these economic decisions was felt by workers, small business owners, and even local communities that depended on stable cross-border trade. Canada's strong response wasn't just about retaliation, it was about charting a new course. With investments in renewable energy, domestic manufacturing, and strategic partnerships, Canada is actively trying to insulate itself from the economic turbulence caused by unpredictable U.S. policies. The stakes are high, and the choices made today will determine the country's economic resilience for years to come. Chapter 3. The EU joins the fight. We are ready to retaliate. Not to be outdone, the European Union quickly mobilized its own countermeasures. In retaliation to U.S. tariffs, the EU slapped additional duties on a range of iconic American products including bourbon, motorcycles, and even Levi's jeans, collectively valued at around $3.4 billion. This wasn't just about protecting European industries, it was about standing up against what many saw as unfair trade practices imposed by the U.S. For instance, U.S. bourbon exports to Europe plummeted by a staggering 37% between 2018 and 2019. Kentucky's distilleries, which once thrived on the robust demand from European markets, suddenly faced a grim reality as their products became less competitive overseas. At the same time, the EU wasn't limiting its response to traditional goods. The bloc also turned its attention to digital trade, targeting tech giants like Apple, Google, and Netflix, industries collectively valued at over $3.2 trillion globally. In the digital arena, the EU introduced stringent regulations that forced tech companies to alter their business models. New digital taxes and compliance requirements meant that companies had to shoulder higher costs. And those costs were inevitably passed on to consumers. For the average European, this could mean higher subscription fees for streaming services, more expensive online shopping, and even changes in how digital content is delivered. The impact wasn't limited to luxury goods and digital services. U.S. auto manufacturers felt a severe blow when European tariffs led to a loss of over 700,000 vehicle sales. With American carmakers struggling to compete in the European market under the new cost structures, companies like Ford and General Motors were forced to cut thousands of jobs. In 2019 alone, more than 4,500 positions were eliminated, sending shockwaves through local communities and manufacturing hubs across the United States. For European consumers, the effects were immediate and tangible. Products that were once considered affordable, from American whiskey to casual apparel, became luxury items as prices surged by 10 to 25%. Everyday life in Europe was altered, as families found themselves having to adjust their budgets to accommodate these new costs. Chapter 4. The Future of Global Trade, a New Economic Alliance? As the trade war raged on, a critical question emerged. How can countries insulate themselves from the volatility of U.S. trade policies? In response, Canada and the European Union began forging stronger economic ties. Under the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, or CETA, Canada and the EU significantly boosted their bilateral trade. Since the agreement took effect, the trade volume between Canada and the EU has grown by 22%, making the EU Canada's second-largest trading partner, with annual trade reaching a staggering $118 billion. This evolving partnership isn't just about numbers on a chart. It represents a strategic pivot away from an over-reliance on the unpredictable U.S. market. For Canadian small and medium-sized enterprises, CETA has opened doors to vast European markets. In fact, government initiatives now offer grants of up to $75 to help these businesses navigate the complexities of international trade, boosting local economies and fostering innovation. One of the most promising areas of this new economic alliance is the focus on clean energy and advanced manufacturing. Canada, rich in natural resources like nickel, aluminum, and uranium, is positioning itself as a crucial supplier for the global green energy revolution. With a commitment of over $4 billion CAD into its critical mineral strategy, Canada is ensuring that these resources are developed sustainably, benefiting local communities and indigenous populations. Meanwhile, European countries, eager to reduce their reliance on unstable suppliers from politically volatile regions, are turning to Canada as a trusted partner. For everyday consumers, this realignment means more than just trade statistics. It promises greater product diversity and, potentially, more stable prices, as Canadian exports, ranging from seafood and maple syrup to advanced clean energy technologies, become more accessible in Europe. Both sides of the Atlantic stand to benefit. Over the long term, this shift could reduce the economic shocks that occur when a single country's policies ripple across the global market. In a world where economic alliances are constantly in flux, building a diversified network of trade partners isn't just smart policy, it's essential for long-term stability. By reducing reliance on any one market, Canada and the EU are paving the way for a more resilient global economy, one that is better equipped to handle political uncertainties and trade disruptions. Chapter 5. What this means for the future, everyday impact and long-term outlook. So, what does all this mean for you, the everyday consumer? The reality is that trade wars, while often discussed in high-level policy debates, have a direct impact on our lives. Whether you're buying groceries, commuting to work, or planning a family vacation, these economic policies affect the price of goods and services, the availability of jobs, and the overall stability of the market. Consider the average American household. Due to tariff-related price increases, many families are paying an extra $831 a year just to keep up with the rising costs of everyday items. That might not seem like much on its own, but over time, it adds up to significant extra expenses that could have been saved or spent on other essentials like healthcare or education. And it isn't just about higher prices. When the auto industry loses jobs, as was the case with the loss of 67,000 positions due to increased steel tariffs, entire communities feel the impact. Reduced consumer spending, lower tax revenues, and increased economic uncertainty all contribute to a cycle that makes it harder for families to thrive. Meanwhile, in Europe, consumers have seen their favorite American products, like bourbon, jeans, and motorcycles, become luxury items as tariffs push prices up by as much as 25%. Yet, amid these challenges, there are also new opportunities emerging. The push towards clean energy and domestic manufacturing, spurred by both U.S. tariffs and retaliatory measures from abroad, has opened up job opportunities in sectors like electric vehicle manufacturing, renewable energy installation, and digital technology. For instance, as Canada invests in its clean energy sector, new jobs are being created that offer long-term stability in a rapidly changing global market. These shifts aren't happening in isolation. They represent a broader trend towards diversification and resilience in the global economy. By building stronger economic alliances, like the one between Canada and the European Union, countries are not only hedging against the uncertainties of U.S. policy but are also creating new ecosystems for growth. In the long run, this could mean more stable prices, more secure jobs, and a healthier economy for all. To sum it up, trade wars aren't just abstract policy debates. They affect the cost of your car, the price of your groceries, and even the stability of your job. When tariffs cause raw materials to cost more, that cost trickles down to every product you buy. When export markets shrink, jobs vanish from factories and plants, sending shockwaves through communities. But as new alliances are forged and economies adapt, there's hope that a more balanced, diversified global trade network can emerge, one that is less vulnerable to the whims of political decisions. So, as you navigate your daily life, remember that these global economic battles have a very real impact on your wallet and your future. The decisions made in boardrooms and government halls ripple out to every corner of our society, from the local diner to the high-tech startup. And while trade wars bring challenges, they also drive innovation and change, pushing us to adapt and build a stronger, more sustainable economic foundation. Thank you for watching. As global economic landscapes continue to shift, stay tuned for more updates and analyses right here on our channel. Together, we can understand how big economic policies shape our everyday lives, and how we can all adapt and thrive in a changing world.